Today's sponsor is Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building a beautiful website and growing your online presence. Have you ever wanted to start a website but have been put off by the thought of complicated coding? Well, worry no more, as Squarespace allows you to stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Products, content, even your time, and there's no coding required. Their easy-to-use drag-and-drop model of creating a website means that anyone can build their dream website in no time at all. The powerful analytics tools provided by Squarespace give you amazing insights into who visits your site and how they interact with your content. Squarespace's analytics tools include page views, traffic sources, audience geography, and more. Figure out what is drawing your audience in and capitalize on the premium data provided to you. Squarespace also allows you to integrate email campaigns into your website, stand out from the competition by converting email subscribers into loyal customers with their templates and automation features. Plus, with the members area feature, you can monetize your content in a way that fits with your brand and unlock a new revenue stream for your business. Squarespace comes with powerful blogging tools allowing you to share anything from stories, photos, and videos to simple updates for your fans. Connect to your socials and automatically push website content to your social media channels, schedule your posts, and make your content work for you. If you're still not convinced, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your new site, go to squarespace.com/brainfood to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And now today's video. In this era of ubiquitous digital media, the idea of being unable to purchase our favorite music at a store that sells music sounds kind of ridiculous. But that was the unfortunate reality for millions of teenagers in the late 1980s and early 1990s wanting to listen to the coolest albums, all thanks to the introduction of the Parental Advisory Explicit Lyrics Warning label. While the Parental Advisory label, or PAL, still exists today and can be found on new albums, few people take notice of it, which is a far cry from the reality of a couple of decades ago when it sufficiently scared some retailers enough to make them not stock CDs marked with the scarlet letter at all. So, who do we have to blame for this clumsy, ham-fisted attempt at censorship of one of our oldest forms of expression? In a word, that'd be Prince. In more words than that, Prince. And Al Gore's wife. To explain the genesis of the Parental Advisory sticker can be traced back to a single Prince song titled Darling Nikki. For anyone who doesn't have the Purple One's discography memorized, the song contains the lyrics, "I knew a girl named Nikki. I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with a magazine." An explicit line, yes, but by no means the most offensive thing ever recorded, even by Prince, and millions of people listened to the song without giving the faintest whiff of a crap that they should be offended. One person who was taken aback by the line, though, was Mary Tipper Gore, the wife of then-Senator Al Gore. According to Tipper, she was listening to the 1984 album Purple Rain with her 11-year-old daughter when she heard the offending lyric, stating, "The vulgar lyrics embarrass both of us. At first, I was stunned, then I got mad. Millions of Americans were buying Purple Rain with no idea what to expect." Somehow not being named Karen, Tipper was shocked that a musician famed for his flamboyant, sexually charged performances would release a song referencing sex. Thus, she formed a group called the Parents Music Resource Center, PMRC, in 1985 with the ultimate goal of censoring all music referencing anything the group deemed offensive. Like Tipper, the other members of the PMRC were mostly wives of notable high-ranking politicians, leading to the coining of the nickname the Washington Wives by the press, with all of the wives similarly shocked by lyrics in the pop songs of the era. Notably, one member, Susan Baker, the wife of then Treasury Secretary James Baker, joined after her 7-year-old daughter listened to Madonna's Like a Virgin and innocently asked her what a virgin was. We're just grateful both of them got out of that situation alive. While these stories make for amusing anecdotes today, in 1985 they were used as fuel for the fire that the PMRC wanted to light under the butts of the RIAA. The stated goal of the PMRC was to limit access to the music they deemed unacceptable to minors. A noble goal, admittedly, but one they wanted to tackle in an awkward and heavy-handed way. For example, the PMRC wanted to not only label music containing explicit lyrics or lyrics referencing anything they deemed objectionable, like sex, drugs, or alcohol, but also limit their sales in big stores, as well as have their covers censored and ban them from being played on the radio, which, in an era before Napster and later streaming, would be a surefire way to kill album sales. To this end, the PMRC released a list dubbed the Filthy 15, basically a list of the songs of the day containing what they felt contains the most unacceptable lyrics and themes. A list that today actually reads like a pretty kick-ass mixtape featuring artists like AC/DC, Cyndi Lauper, Black Sabbath, Prince, Judas Priest, Def Leppard, among others. In an attempt to appease the PMRC, the RIA agreed to self-censor some releases by including a small sticker reading, "Warning, tone of this record unsuitable for minors," and later a more firm sticker reading, "Parental guidance, explicit lyrics," a move that was widely criticized by musicians of the era and provoked the ire of the PMRC further. Naturally, the group felt that the move wasn't enough, so took the issue to the Senate, hoping to push for a mandatory rating system similar to one employed for movies by the MPAA. In the ensuing hearing that began on September 19th, 1985, the PMRC argued that, and we are going to quote them here because the inaccuracy of the latter half of their statement offends our sensibilities, their goal was to educate and inform parents of this alarming new trend towards lyrics that are sexually explicit. Yes, a new trend concerning sexually explicit lyrics from a group of women who mostly grew up in the 50s and 60s. I mean, the 1958 hit Lollipop is literally about a girl noting her man tastes sweet. She loves when he shakes his hips at her, and otherwise continually references him being her own personal lollipop. That's not to mention, a large percentage of the rest of the song since humans have been humaning. Do not even get us started on songs like the 1971 international hit Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones, which includes such extremely family-friendly lyrics like discussing slave women rape. Let's quote that one, shall we? "Gold Coast slave ship bound for cotton fields, sold in the market down in New Orleans. Scarred old slaver knows he's doing all right. Hear him whip the women just around midnight. Brown sugar, how come you taste so good? Uh-huh. Brown sugar, just like a black girl should. Uh-huh. Oh, woo." And I feel weird even reading that. In any event, going back to Tipper and Friends, they once again cited the Filthy 15, as well as the music videos for Van Halen's Hot for Teacher and the album cover of Def Leppard's Pyromania to illustrate this new disturbing trend in music. The PMRC additionally called on the testimony of a music producer who argued that heavy metal was fundamentally dangerous because it centered around the element of hatred as opposed to rock and roll, which was derived from church music. Now, it's at this point that we're going to do a brief aside and discuss the origin of the moniker rock and roll, because it is literally and very explicitly in its origin about sex. The word roll has been used since the Middle Ages to refer to, among other things, having sex. Let's go for a roll in the hay, rolling under the sheets, etc. The word rock, again, among other things, has been used since at least the 17th century as a term meaning shake or disturb. A couple of hundred years later, this had also spread to black gospel singers using rock to refer to being shaken in the spiritual sense, as in a spiritual rapture, rocked. By the early 20th century, rock had morphed somewhat to being used as a slang term by black Americans, referring to dancing to music with a strong beat, principally rhythm and blues, at the time called race music or race records. The specific 1922 slang definition of rock was something to the effect of to cause to move with musical rhythm. It also had strong sexual overtones when used in this way. Around the same time, these two terms, rock and roll, had naturally merged together, forming a double entendre, typically referring to very suggestive or scandalous dancing, as well as simply having sex, depending on how you looked at it. One example of this is the 1922 song My Man Rocks Me with One Steady Roll. Another early reference to the term rock and roll was a 1935 J. Russell Robinson lyric from Henry Red Allen's Get Rhythm in Your Feet and Music in Your Soul. If Satan starts to hound you, commence to rock and roll, get rhythm in your feet and music in your soul, etc. At this point, the phrase rock and roll was relatively well known among black Americans. This particular tune was also later covered by quite a few popular white musicians such as Benny Goodman, which may have helped spread the phrase somewhat. The term got its biggest global boost through a Cleveland, Ohio disc jockey named Alan Freed. Freed played early forms of rock and roll, a mix of rhythm and blues and country music primarily, on his radio show and called the mix rock and roll, a term he was previously familiar with from race records and songs such as Rock and Rolling Mama from 1939 and Rock and Roll. There were 3 songs named like this in the late 1940s. Freed was encouraged to call this mix of music rock and and roll by his sponsor, record store owner Leo Mintz, who was trying to boost sales on race records by getting white shoppers to buy them. Race records weren't very popular at the time among white people, but by rebranding the music rock and roll, the music quickly became extremely popular among teenagers of all ethnicities, largely thanks to this and Freed's radio show, the Moondog Rock and Roll House Party. Incidentally, classic race records were in the process of being rebranded around this time to rhythm and blues, thanks to famed music journalist and producer Jerry Wexler. In any event, Freed's show was also the primary reason why Cleveland was chosen for the location of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the 1980s. When deciding between cities, the selection board chose Cleveland, owing to Freed having played a significant role in popularizing rock and roll music, and then branding the style of music rock and roll, though he obviously didn't coin the term itself, as noted previously. In any event, once again going back to the then very obviously extremely new trend of songs referencing sex that occurred in the 1980s, which had at no point before in history ever been a thing, testifying on behalf of not censoring what would eventually become some of the fondest remembered artists of music of the 1980s, was none other than Frank Zappa, as well as country musician John Denver and Twisted Sister frontman Dee Snider. All three men delivered withering takedowns of the proposed censorship, passionately arguing for the right to express themselves creatively, with Snider in particular taking the opportunity to take a pot shot at Tipper for misconstruing and using the lyrics for Under the Blade as promoting sadomasochism, bondage, and rape in an Attack article about him the previous year. All things he took exception to as a practicing Christian and family man who also just happened to front a heavy metal band. In his official statement to the Senate, Snider educated the media and Tipper on the real meaning of the song, stating, "The lyrics," Gore quoted, "have absolutely nothing to do with these topics. On the contrary, the words in question are about surgery and the fear that it instills in people." He then added, "That Gore could misquote me is curious, since we make it a point to print all our lyrics on the inner sleeve of every album. As the creator of Under the Blade, I can say categorically that the only sadomasochism, bondage, and rape in this song is in the mind of Ms. Gore." Snider was unable to sway Gore and the Senate, and the RIAA, feeling mounting pressure from the public, agreed to self-censor all new releases from November the 1st of that year before the hearing had even reached a conclusion. As part of this compromise, the RIAA agreed to place large, standardized warning labels on any album containing overt references to sex, drugs, and alcohol, and to also audibly censor said references for the radio. This was acceptable for the PMRC, who, by the way, originally wanted the offending lyrics to be clearly written on a much bigger sticker on the front of the album. For some reason, the PMRC never saw the irony in trying to stop children hearing swear words by printing them in massive letters on the front of a CD. Curiously, although the censoring of songs for the radio is compulsory to comply with obscenity laws and ensure a record can be played at times when kids may be listening, putting a PAL sticker on an album is entirely optional. As the president of the RIAA, Gary Sherman, has himself explained, "Artists have a First Amendment right to express themselves, and consumers have a right to hear what those artists say. Consumers also should be warned when they might find some of the content objectionable. By asking the artist and the label to make that determination, we avoid any appearance of censorship by a board or some music nanny. Instead, it's the artist and label who are advising listeners that they should be aware that some of the content may be objectionable. As a result, artists are under no obligation to put PAL stickers on their albums if they don't personally feel there is any objectionable content contained in it. This said, their record company might simply do this to avoid controversy. Similarly, back when they existed on mass record, stores could label any objectionable content themselves to warn parents, something that notably occurred with Frank Zappa's Jazz from Hell. It should be noted here that the album is entirely instrumental and contains no lyrics, despite receiving a parental warning explicit lyrics sticker. Thus, it is often used as an example of censorship gone mad, with some going as far as to suggest that the censorship was a spiteful response from the PMRC due to Zappa's comments during the 1985 Senate hearing. However, the truth is that while the record did receive an explicit lyrics warning, it wasn't from the PMRC or even Zappa's record company, but rather a regional chain of the Fred Meyer department store who took exception to the name of the song G-Spot Tornado. Fred Meyer execs, who were presumably unaware that the album had no lyrics, stuck a generic warning label on it because of this song name and just released it as usual. One store who took the warning labels more seriously still was Walmart, who famously refused to stock any album with a parental warning, along with magazines sections discussing rock and heavy metal. Even today, the chain will only sell clean versions of albums with the profanity edited out, a choice that saw them refuse to stock the Green Day album 21st Century Breakdown, when the punk rockers refused to back down to the retail giant in providing an edited version. All of this said, it should be noted that even back when physical media reigned supreme, musicians noticed that the warning label did little to stop sales, and in some cases, it actually seemed to help improve them. Nowhere was this effect greater than the first album ever slapped with the standardized warning label, 2 Live Crews banned in the USA. The album was declared obscene, and one Florida district went so far as to make it illegal to purchase. The record store owner was actually arrested for selling a copy to an undercover cop. Eventually, these charges were quashed, but not before the band had their names splashed in newspapers across the country, resulting in millions of potential fans hearing about the album that was too spicy for their ears. Members of 2 Live Crew eventually recognized the controversy as a positive boon to the album's sales, the exact opposite intention of the PMRC. Since then, some of the best reviewed and best-selling albums of all time have carried the same warning. From Dr. Dre's The Chronic to Blink-182's Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. The lesson to parents being, if you want to stop kids listening to music you think is inappropriate, first, please, for the love of all that is holy, do remember that the music you listened to as a kid was just as spicy. And also, maybe don't ask record labels to put a massive sticker on the front of every album telegraphing to kids that there's something they totally want to hear more about in it.